2015 Chevy Tahoe. Brand new, it has 215 miles on it. You'll notice this vehicle has got this real aggressive stance in the back, but yet in the front it has a minimal amount. And this vehicle's got this downward rake of 1 3/4 to 2 full inches. Now what SuspensionMAXX is going to do is offer you a simple, quick, bolt-in kit backed with the SuspensionMAXX lifetime structural warranty, completely reversible. You'll be able to put that kit in there and set this truck up in 3 to 4 different height increments, anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches to 2.5. And all that can be easily done and give this brand new Tahoe that look it deserves. Here at SuspensionMAXX, we're going to install the first phase of this leveling kit. Now this would do us 1.5 inches of lift, and this is done at the bottom of the strut. There are two 15mm hex bolts that come up through the control arm, or the lower control arm or A-arm, up into some caged nuts on the strut. And we're going to remove those 2 bolts first. Now prior to doing this, we jacked the vehicle up and supported it with jack stands fully so the suspension is fully unloaded. We're going to remove the mounting strut bolts. They come up from the bottom on both sides of the vehicle. 2 on the driver's side, 2 on the passenger side. What that's going to do is free up the lower control arm and the upper control arm so that this A-arm can be simply lowered down. Now it's going to be supplied with the new hardware to bolt this in. Prior to putting this hardware in, you're going to need a suitable tool like a screwdriver blade or a pry bar, and you're going to pry this clip nut off. It's actually locked on 2 edges right here, and simply getting underneath one corner and prying outward on it will dislodge that speed nut, allowing you to put in the new hardware along with the spacer that goes in with it. After removing the 2 lower strut mounting bolts, that lower strut is free to move off the control arm. Now that can be done by simply pushing the control arm down and giving us the distance required to insert this spacer and reassemble it with the new mounting hardware supplied in the kit. This would give us 1.5 inches of lift. Easy to do. No removal of the strut required, no cutting, no grinding, no modifications, and completely reversible. This would give us our 1.5 inch lift should the customer desire that 1.5 inch leveling. Now every truck on the road could use a minimum of the 1.5 inches. Now this is an economical kit backed with a lifetime structural warranty, includes the hardware and the full instructions on how to put it in. Now we're going to discuss removal of the coilover as a unit to install the additional max stack spacers to give us incremental height variations in the preferred ride height. Okay? That's done by simply unlocking these electrical locks or connectors on the top of the strut, and they simply lift off with a small screwdriver. There's actually as many as 3 connectors on there. Now this vehicle is not set up with any kind of auto ride control that would have an electrical connector on the top of the strut. If it did, there's a wire connector that you push the tabs down and it disengages from the top of the strut shaft. Now the only 3 bolts we're going to take off are the outer 3. The inner one is actually containing the coil spring and holding that under pressure. We do not ever want to take that top center mounted nut off. We don't loosen it, we don't turn it, we simply take these 3 outer nuts off. That's best done with a ratchet wrench, and by simply ratcheting it and doing all of our work under the fender well. We really have no reason to go over the top of the fender. We don't have to worry about scratches or any damage to the outer body. All of our work is going to be done right here through this fender well. Now if you don't have a ratchet wrench, a standard ratchet and socket will work, or even a box wrench. Now once that bolt, that nut is loosened fully, it can be removed completely. Again, the only three we're going to take off are these large outer nuts, nothing with the center nut. And that happens to be an 18 millimeter. Now, some continued wrenching on those inside ones. And this strut will be right out of here. Okay, we take that third nut off. You can already see that this strut is already loose in the vehicle. Okay, you've taken the third nut off. Now simply pushing inward on the strut at the bottom, the whole strut drops down. Pay attention not to let it drop onto the axle or the CV joint. Once it's disengaged, it tilts outward. See this tilting of the strut? And this can be lifted right out of the vehicle. Now once we got it this far, it's just a matter of dialing it in with the shims. How high do you want to go? Depends on how many shims you put in. You pick your height. 1 shim, 2 shims, 3 shims, 4 shims. Now what we're also going to include with this kit is replacement nuts. Now you know you took this tall nut off, which consumed all of those threads. We're going to give you a low profile flange nut, which has the locking mechanism on it, and that's going to go on there, of course, once it's back into the vehicle. But each one of these shims give you a 1/4 inch increment in your ride height. So you can dial this in exactly to what's required for the vehicle. All the way up to 2.5 full inches, combining these 4 on top with this lower strut piece at the bottom. By simply lifting the strut back up, dropping it gently into the suspension between the A-arms, you can bring it right back up and start the new nuts on the top. It's that easy. 2015 Tahoe LT, all done with the SuspensionMAXX Advanced Leveling Lift Kit. We picked the front end of this 2015 up 2.5 inches in the front and 1.5 inches in the rear. Now this thing looks way better than stock. Now you can show off to all your neighbors what ground clearance is, because this thing is way taller in the front and nicely accented in the rear. Now it's not necessary to do the rear, but this guy said if we're going to do the front, add a little to the back. Now the angles are not extreme. This vehicle still rides and handles well. The angles on the CV are not extreme. It's 2.5 inches higher in the front, and well done. Front end alignment all completed. Rides just like factory. Nice. Another great product for another new vehicle from SuspensionMAXX.